research training seminar we're calling Awesome. My brother suggested to me that if you put E, it would look like assume. So it's academic writing, education, supervisor, upskilling, and mentoring experience I'm presenting today. So we're looking at a number of research designs, the advantages, disadvantages, and there are a number of famous scholars in the three primary approaches to research. We all know that there's quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. And I don't know if you know, but some people distinguish between multiple methods and mixed methods. And I can tell you before the end of the session if you're curious. So the ones that I could think about is for quantitative, Marie Curie, who is the only woman to have won two Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry and one in physics. Albert Einstein, we don't need to speak much about him. And in qualitative, for those who don't know, Brene Brown, by being a social worker with a PhD in public health, she did research that she found so surprising that when she shared the research results on a TED Talk, she went viral. So her talk, she's done a series, but her first TED Talk went so viral. She's in the top, for those who don't know, that's a particular talk that's now put on YouTube. So she's one of the most famous YouTubers. And so her actual research in qualitative approach actually has led to best-selling books and her having her own brand. So qualitative research can have value because it's actually real value. I've actually benefited from her books and her thinking about the value of vulnerability. It's very, very the kind of courage that you require to do leadership. It's really intriguing. What it really takes to be successful has come through her research. And you all would know of Charles Darwin. This is not about whether you agree with him. His whole approach of observation has led to a whole new brand of science in terms of evolution. And in mixed methods, I'm not sure there's a leader, but I just put John Creswell because he has a number of books and I actually met him. So Jamaica uh, has a mixed methods association, and I went in 2017 to the Mixed Methods Conference in Montego Bay, sponsored by UTech, and I was wowed as to how complex mixed methods can be and the amazing scholars that were at the seminar. I was like, I wonder if one day I can learn this. I was really wowed by the whole experience. And I remember there was one of John Creswell's proteges. She did a presentation, was excellent, a woman. And in the question and answer, I put up my hand and I said, how do you get to be so knowledgeable? And I said, is it your mentor? And she says, no, most of it is her reading and reading and reading and reading. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be an excellent scholar, it really is a lot of work, in my opinion. So that's just a context of I found one paper that has over several hundred citations comparing qualitative and quantitative research. And that particular paper had this table which showed some of the differences in the dimensions of qualitative and quantitative research. I think we all already know that quantitative research is about numerical data and qualitative is about non-numerical data. Typically, quantitative research, let me go back, quantitative research has larger numbers, qualitative tends to have smaller numbers, mixed methods that combines your approaches. But here are some other things that you can think about. And I think all I'm going to talk about right now, because is generally speaking, quantitative tends to be more immediate. There are some longitudinal quantitative studies, but more quantitative studies are cross-sectional. Qualitative tends to take longer. Quantitative tends to be from an external point of view, whereas qualitative is more focused on the researcher. Quantitative tends to be well structured, whereas quantitative tends to be less structured. It tends to be more exploratory in general. And in terms of flexibility, quantitative has a lot less flexibility. Once you come up with your research proposal, chapters 1 to 3, you tend to just follow it as is. The qualitative, you're expected to sometimes even change even the research questions as you continue to explore the project. And you can look at these as well. So I'm just going to take a break from my slideshow to just show you this. And I'm going to come back to this later since one person is leaving early. And you can get this information. So I wanted, anytime we're here, to look at a specific area. So I decided, since I think I am currently assigned as the technology entrepreneurship subject leader, and I'm hoping to teach tech startup next semester, as in September semester. And given the current ENDS project the government has started, I think there really is lots of opportunities to research on e-commerce in Jamaica. So I looked up just in the last few days some articles on intentional adoption of e-commerce for food pickup and delivery. Most of it was on delivery. So as per previous presentations, like we said, that you need to look at stuff inside that area as well as related. So if you look through this quantitative, so just to show you, this is primarily Utah 2 papers relating to e-commerce and food, but there are actually other models. For example, this one is planned behavior. So Utah 2, apparently based on my research, was one of the most popular theoretical model used for looking at e-commerce, and Utah 2 is a quantitative model. So these are all, this list, this is not a complete list. This is just some of the papers that are quantitative on e-commerce and food. And some of them were not food. I don't remember how many. So this online shopping may not just be food, might be all of online shopping. So I looked at a number of papers there. And so far, I only found one qualitative paper. So this actually was a qualitative paper using Utah model in a qualitative way. And then there are a number of mixed method studies. Most of them I could find that use Utah 2, but there was one. So for example, the value proposition of food delivery apps actually was a mixed method study. Most of the mixed method studies I found that were interesting. So for example, this one is on autonomous vehicles for people with disability. There were very few mixed methods with food delivery e-commerce that I could find. I'm not saying that there were none, I couldn't find any. But what is interesting about these articles is most of them in the paper make an argument like this. We use mixed methods in order to essentially verify that it's like a triangulation approach, that if you get data from quantitative and qualitative, you can be more certain of the results essentially. So saying all that to say that we can, if we have the time, we're going to come back to this, but on the same exact topic, people use quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods, even for answering the same kind of research question. So I'm just giving you that frame before I give the rest of my presentation to show that historically, the quantitative approach has been used by the natural sciences, the qualitative approach has been used by humanities and the social sciences, and mixed methods, initially first by social sciences, but it's actually going broader. Just giving the context now in terms of just one area. So back to my presentation. So from current slide. So quantitative is the prevailing paradigm for the natural sciences, and there's a whole philosophy that's behind it. So the philosophy behind a quantitative research design is that we discover the truth that's out there. It's called a positivist paradigm, and there are other ways to talk about that. So one particular paper that where's the citation? I don't know. I have the citation somewhere. Actually had the advantage and disadvantages of different methods in quantitative. So today I'm not going to get into the overall advantage and disadvantage of quantitative versus qualitative. Just going to show that most of the common quantitative designs has disadvantages, not disadvantages. Right, so not saying this is the best paper, I just found one that seemed good. This one had a lot of citations, and I looked at the content and I said, okay, great, so we'll start with this. So let's look at surveys first. So since we use surveys a lot in SCIT especially for major projects, We know it doesn't take a lot of time to do. It's cost effective. It's easy to collect the data, especially if it's online, and you can use statistics fairly easily to analyze it, both descriptive and analytical. You can read a number of surveys very easily. It can be highly representative. And if the survey has been tested, especially initially with something like how you say it, Chromebot Alpha, not sure, but there's statistical tests you can do to ensure that you pre-test the questionnaire to make sure that it's actually objective, not just if you design the questionnaire well, so it's reliable, then the questionnaire won't be affected by the subjectivity of the researcher. Disadvantage of surveys include that it's the reliability of the data is very dependent on the quality of answers. So people can, if it's a self-report, people can lie, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So there's a problem, for example, of people forgetting the answer. And the survey structure is important. So since a survey typically has either all close-ended questions or mostly close-ended questions, it tends to be rigid, and so you don't get the kind of rich information you get in a qualitative project. It doesn't tend to capture emotions, behaviors, and changes of emotions of respondents, not typically. There are other possibilities. So there is simulation. So simulation, basically, advantages are it looks at what if questions that can be tested and answered. So I would say that even though we're not looking at it that way, myself and Mrs. McNamara are in a COVID-19 working team that seems to be using simulation. I mean, it's called computer modeling, but essentially the computer modeling is trying to simulate what if scenarios to find out if this and this happens, then this is the amount of deaths due to COVID, hospitalizations, and cases. And this actually is based on previous research. So they take the actual empirical data from the field, that's what's happening right now in the pandemic in Jamaica, and take previous research and then essentially build models to test what if questions. And even though I'm not an expert on it, it seems to me a very important part of research. And then what tends to happen when the use is in the real world for simulating with computer models is that they tend to write the papers afterwards, at least the ones that we're talking about. For the modeling for public health, it's used and then they write up the paper after we finish using it, not the other way around, because it's normally a practical project. However, it does have a number of disadvantages. It requires deep knowledge of the field. And the one I just talked about, I would definitely say it really requires a lot of knowledge. So to do this well, the example I just used requires deep knowledge of mathematics, deep knowledge of public health, just a lot of complex knowledge that to do it well. That's why the particular project I'm talking about requires so many people to be involved so that the mixture of different disciplines can help make sure or improve the chance that the model is actually representative of what's really going on. It's definitely time consuming and relatively expensive, especially compared to surveys. And you can require special software tools and or hardware tools. Field experiments don't tend, as far as I know, to be used in computing so much, but it's where you, not where you do a random control experiment, it's where you do an experiment in the field. So I think maybe one of Mr. White's projects right now may be a field experiment. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing one of his major projects, but it's where you actually do the project in the quote unquote where it will be used. So the problem with that is you it's going to be difficult to control the variables. If you want to know variable X affects variable Y, if it's in a situation where you're not controlling the variables, how will you know if how will you know if there's a how will you know you're actually controlling the variables, and how will you know the impact of the what's called the extraneous or confounding variables on the project? How can you do it again since it's in a natural setting? And many field experiments can have ethical problems, and if you approve it in advance and ethical problems arrive, how do you control that? And then the last two in this particular paper was correlational, and I think this really should have been random controlled and other experimental studies, but correlational study, which many of us don't think about, but correlational studies are useful. They're used in many different fields where you basically look at the association between two variables. Typically, in a cross-sectional study, in a correlational study, you don't manipulate behavior. Let's forget about even anything that says here. One of the disadvantages is a lot of people who are not researchers tend to, and new students in research tend to mix up and think that a correlation can lead to a declaration of causation, when you can never do that with any level. I mean, if you do that, you're having faulty reasoning. So the thing about it, so as it says right here, no direct cause and effect should ever be inferred, and people in newspaper articles and new students to research make that mistake all the time. There's a problem with internal external validity. In order to, if you want to essentially generalize beyond the sample, that's internal validity. No, internal validity is generalizing within the sample, and external validity is generalizing outside of the sample. Both of those can be problematic in correlational research. And since there's no conclusive reason for the correlation, how much can you do with it? So correlational research may be useful to provide you a reason to do other research. There are different kinds of research that you would use multivariate analysis, which would include, for example, experimental studies like randomized control standards, which are considered the gold standard of research, and all quantitative focused fields, which would include the natural sciences, and most computer disciplines would consider that the premier of all types of research. So you can do statistical tests, it can be very technically rigorous. However, it is quite complex and requires specialized statistical software. So we're going to go from that now to qualitative research design. It's prevailing paradigm for humanities. So I have this quote because I found it interesting. So an article published 2 years ago says that Toy et al., and I'm quoting directly from their quote, the dominance of quantitative methods and the add-on status of qualitative. Toy asks, what value can qualitative research add to quantitative research design? The fact that this question still gets asked is a clear reflection of the current state of evaluation research design. We would encourage researchers to push the methodological boundaries of their discipline, consider what mixed methods approaches that fully integrate qualitative and quantitative research as equal partners look like in practice, and redefine the gold standard. So that is why we're here. So part of the reason why we're here talking about the value of mixed methods and qualitative is most of us in SCIT tend to be like, what's the value of qualitative? I remember some years ago, a colleague who no longer works here presented what in my mind was an excellent research project that was a qualitative only, and the verbal shaking of, sorry, people actually did things like literally the negative responses to their presentation, like, what is this? And the person was presenting on some aspect of social media, and they asked a number of interview questions in order to find out. And it was essentially an exploratory research study that had value. But when I saw my colleagues, I thought, wow, I'd have to be very brave in this context before I do qualitative research, because and on that note, I just sat in on a qualitative research last semester at a university student. And truthfully, guys, qualitative research is quite complex. And in addition to that, I just was involved in a qualitative research, which was part of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and it was quite complex as well. Qualitative research, and we just submitted collectively to 2 journals, 2 different papers. Qualitative research has value. The question is it appropriate for the research question that you want to look at? So here are some reasons why qualitative research is valuable. It's valuable because it can be applied to model development to explore existing methods and to identify where problems are occurring and guidance is needed. So for example, if you really are a quantitative researcher and your goal is to get models that you can test. So I am giving this answer. These answers, the two here, are from a point of view of somebody who believes in quantitative research. Qualitative research can be valuable for even those people. So essentially, if what you want is models, if nobody has come up with a good model as yet in the area you want to research, if you do qualitative research first, then you can figure out the model. In fact, I'm going to talk about that soon with the e-commerce food delivery and show how it's been used. So essentially, let me see, let's give a topic. What topic would be a good topic? If, for example, let's even go with the ENDS project. So ENDS is, so e-commerce is for food delivery is relatively new in Jamaica as far as I know. So this ENDS project basically meant, and yes, we can use existing models like Utah 2, and there are other models that I saw in the papers, but it could be that we decide that there are 2 or 3 other variables that we think could be important. The way to know whether a variable is important is to do one of 2 things. We extend an existing model, or we first do some focus groups or interviews where we ask real people, like, are these things important to you? And then we modify or create a new model. Hopefully that makes sense. And so it both can modify existing models, and it can also contribute to new models. In addition to these limited value, qualitative research is valuable in itself. So the disciplines like sociology, anthropology, those are qualitative only disciplines, and they have value. A lot of psychology uses mixed methods these days, because even though you can use surveys that finds out things in psychology and randomized control tests, some things you're really only going to find out well in a discipline like psychology with a qualitative only project or mixed methods project. So that's why a lot of the humanities and social sciences use qualitative. I'm not giving a comprehensive list here. So mixed methods research design, it's the prevailing paradigm for the social sciences. It offers, according to Venkatesh et al., 2016 in Calif 2020, offers at least 3 benefits: to address confirmatory and exploratory research questions, to provide stronger inferences on a single method or worldview, and finally to produce a greater assortment of divergent and or complementary views. This is actually not a comprehensive list. I'm looking at some paper, there's actually a longer list. But the point is, if it is, there is a possibility that qualitative only or quantitative only may not adequately address what you're trying to find out. In fact, let me just stick a pin right here to give you one definition. People have different definitions of differences between mixed methods and multiple methods. So when I went to the Mixed Methods Conference in 2017 in Jamaica, where John Cresswell and others who had published books on mixed and multiple methods, I found out that these people say that there's a difference. So since that, this is what I've come to my understanding. Some people say multiple methods, most of what we're doing in SCIT for undergraduate is really multiple methods by this definition. So multiple methods project is where you use both qualitative and quantitative, but there's no one research question that uses both. Usually a mixed method has at least one research question that you're using both a quantitative and a qualitative data set to answer that question. And then there are lots of different types of mixed methods. There's mixed methods where the qualitative informs the quantitative. There are some that the quantitative informs the qualitative. There are some that the qualitative and quantitative are done at the same time to answer the one or more research questions. It's a bit complex, but mixed methods is non-trivial. If I go back to qualitative being non-trivial, personally, the two qualitative research design that I personally prefer is one is called what's the one called? One is called phenomenology, which is looking at a phenomenon that people are experiencing and finding out like their experience of it. And the other one is called what's it called? I can't remember the name of the one that I like the best. The other one is called what's it called again? Let me try to look at my own. I'm trying to tell you something and I don't know myself. So let me take 2 seconds and look up what I'm trying to tell you. Give me 1 second. So I want to say, sorry, there's a reason why I want to say it. Types of qualitative research methods. Right. So grounded theory. So grounded theory, I personally really like. So back to, I was in a particular context with some, really knowledgeable researchers, and I told them I wanted to do grounded theory, and they asked me what type. That's when I started to look. There are so many different approaches to grounded theory that if you want to do grounded theory, you actually need to distinguish if you're doing this leading grounded theory person or that other one, or come with your own. Grounded theory, so just to give you a context, grounded theory is basically an approach to qualitative where you collect data in order to come up with a theory that you can test using a quantitative method. Since so, probably because of having a background in the natural sciences in high school and liking it, that's probably why of the qualitative approaches I like grounded theory, but I see the value in the others. And the project I just was involved with the Ministry of Health, use the phenomenological method, and actually liked it from before. So I personally like these two. And by the way, not I just said personally like, what I've discovered as I am on a lot of in-person conferences in the last few years and online forums on Facebook and other social media, what you choose is a combination of your particular philosophical paradigm as well as what makes sense for your project. And as to whether it should be that what is a best match or what is your personal philosophy, I'm not even going to answer that here, but I'm going to tell you it's actually a combination. Because at the end of it, if it's a mismatch, like logically with your project, then that's going to be a problem when you do peer review. But on the other hand, sometimes there actually is more than one sensible choice. So at the end of it, the researcher actually gets to choose what is going to be approach. So let's go back to the slideshow. Here we are from current slide. So, and these are the references for what I presented so far. Those 4 references. Okay. Right. So I now wanted to go to this list. So maybe I should stop before I continue. So because what I wanted to do for the rest of the time that we're here is to look at this list of some of these papers and talk about what we can learn from it. So let me stop share for a second and see who's here. Oh, good morning, Nadine. Nice, welcome. Anybody has any question or comments so far?
One comment, the point that you made about people forgetting the respondents forgetting the experience is really a problem that can occur in any type of research. So it could be that, when you are gathering the information from them, it is so far from when they had the experience that, so it is not per se a disadvantage of one type, is really about...
Well, methodological limitations, which you're talking about, that is why a longitudinal study that is prospective could be argued to be a better kind of study. So a cohort study, which is a longitudinal study where if it's a self-reported study, would not have that disadvantage because people are reporting as is. And if you're looking at a random control trial where people are answering the questions as it happens, there wouldn't be recall bias because they're being asked as it happens. So not every project will have that. So it
Right. So, but
depends.
you listed it as a disadvantage of one of the methods.
Yeah, man,
I
but
think
it's not.
as quantitative, was it? So I'm
No,
saying it's
no,
not
just straight from a paper. That's all of that was straight from a paper. So I was saying it was under that particular set of researchers. They put it as a limitation. I think it was for surveys because a lot of surveys there tends to be a gap between when the
yeah,
survey.
man, and I'm agreeing, but I'm saying that is not
But
a
I'm just I'm
disadvantage per se of
but I'm
it
just
is
disagreeing with you.
mhm.
In general, that disadvantage can happen in all types, but
Right.
there are
That's what
ways around it.
we're agreeing. We're agreeing to the same thing. That's the point I'm making, that it can happen in all types.
Right. So there
But
can be
but
recall
it's
bias
as if they
in
were saying
qualitative. Yeah, man.
it can, yeah. So they were
So
zooming
there
in
can be recall bias in qualitative. In fact, let me go back to this slide.
right, which is so that I'm disagreeing with where they say it is a disadvantage of this type. It
Oh, okay.
really can happen in any type. That's the point I'm making. So we're
Yeah, man,
agreeing
I
on that.
understand. In fact, let me go back to share the screen and let's look at that slideshow. Let's go back to this. So it was here from current slide. So I think it might have been, let me see. Is it, I'm trying to think where would it have been? Because the disadvantage. It's not under this. Maybe it's quality. No, I don't think yeah, I think it would have been there. So I'm trying to find where it was. I'm just looking for the disadvantage to see where it was.
I think it might have been a discussion on qualitative.
Discussion on qualitative.
Oh, well, that's where
No,
you are.
I didn't have much on. I didn't have much. I didn't have much on the screen. So this is no direct. This I agree with completely. The complex of that model building. I'm actually looking to see where it was on the slide. At any rate, let's just say that there are a number of methodological limitations in all research designs. And the key, colleagues, is that no matter what research you choose, whether qualitative, quantitative, multiple methods, or mixed methods, it is incumbent upon the researcher or the research team to actually write those up. Not only write it up when you're writing up the study at the end, it is to reduce the amount of limitations where possible. That's basically the goal, so that you want the research to be valid and reliable. So part of what I'm saying here is that there is no one best research design. So even though most of us here tend to think quantitative is the best by far, it has its limitations in any of these. So whether you choose field experiments, simulation, surveys, correlational studies, randomized controls, trials, and if you go into public health, there are others: case control, um, uh, cohort studies, and the like. Even case analysis for public health can be a quantitative research study, even though it is typically qualitative in many other fields. The point is, no matter what kind of quantitative research design you choose, it has some limitations in its methods. Similarly, for qualitative, it has its value, and the limitations is not just that it's time consuming. It can, because one of the biggest problems with qualitative research designs is no matter how objective the researcher or research team tries to be, there is some amount of subjectivity in qualitative research designs. That's probably the biggest challenge with it. And mixed method research designs, one is it's very time consuming and expensive relative to the other types. And there can be some challenges, assuming that because it's mixed methods, their results are going to be valid. Because if, for example, the if the
And
methods are
when you
not
finish, Miss
robust,
Fleur,
yeah, man, let's go one second. If the
oh,
methods are not robust, your conclusions are still not going to be valid. That's it. Go ahead, Mr. White.
thank you. Wonderful presentation. Can you go back to the disadvantages of um, the quantitative model? Yeah,
Yeah, man, here. It's two. Which one of them? Two slides.
both of them.
Yeah, man. Well, we're here on the first of the two slides.
Okay, all right. I was just taking it back in. Okay, all right, all right. You can go to the next one.
Sure.
All right, no problem.
Okay. You had a comment or just wanted to look at the slides?
No, I'd wanted to just look on the slides.
Okay.
What I what I also wanted to ask you, see,
Fine.
it's somewhat related to this. At the beginning, you mentioned the papers that we're looking at. You taught two.
Yeah, man. I'm watching. We haven't finished, you know. So
Okay, okay,
I'm planning
all
to
right.
look at this now. Should I go ahead?
Well, depends on our colleagues. I don't know what they think. When you're doing it in the,
Yes.
all right, Miss Muir, can you
So I
just
still
mention?
have. Well, I haven't really finished my entire presentation, but I just paused because I
Yeah,
think it would be good to make sure if anybody had any questions about basically a theoretical presentation, if there are any questions or clarifications.
all right. Can I ask when you're going through it to see, just
Hmm.
explain the difference with you taught two, why it is better than Tom? As I notice, I still see a few persons mention Tom.
Hmm. Okay.
David, she spoke about that, was it 2 weeks back?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, all
So
right.
you have not been paying attention, sir.
Yeah, man. I was at that one.
Okay.
It's just that even after that, I still see persons
Oh, still.
mentioning Tom, and there are other models, right?
Right. But I think at this point, if the students have started with the TAM,
Yeah.
and this, if they've already started collecting the data, I would say
Yes.
going forward, we'll just because the other thing about the TAM, is that there could be justification for TAM. But the question is it going to be TAM plus one or two other variables? So I'm not going to say that TAM is never suitable. I'm never going to say that as a general thing because to make if so colleagues, we don't want to make rules of because don't forget Utah too was a model based on a whole lot of things, and there may very soon may be a better model than Utah 2, whether it's Utah 3 or a new model. And what was interesting to me, and I didn't have time to go through all of this, because I would love if any of you would like to join me. I would love us to do a research study on e-commerce in Jamaica right now. It would be really good. So we have papers already. So this could be the beginning of let's figure out a good study to do, whether we, do it as supervising undergraduates and graduate students, or we're doing it collectively by ourselves. But it's a really intriguing. So let's see. I don't know if I had meant to make some more notes. So, okay, that one wouldn't be one. Let's look at something that's recent. I'm just scrolling through the list. Okay, let's look at. Let me see this one because this was such an intriguing. This was an intriguing paper. Somebody, what's in the chat? I have to. Yes, I remember because it came to the ethics committee. There is actually 3 undergraduate students doing e-commerce and 1 master student, but they're actually all doing different things, and that doesn't mean that we can't do another e-commerce project. So, yes. And in fact, on that note, here's one of the things that I'll say, which I've been thinking for a long time. Colleagues, I've thought for a very long time that one of the mistakes that we make is insofar as we all have potential to publish and we are intelligent, we're not working collectively. So at this very same time, There are one person is supervising 3 undergraduate projects on that, and another person is doing that. Do we talk to each other? Can we bounce off ideas of each other? Can we give feedback? No, we're not doing that, and it's not surprising. And we've been doing that for years. So the question, what I'm really saying is that I think this whole area is ripe for research, and I think we should look at what research still needs to be done on this area. Sorry. So I don't mean to repeat whatever the other projects are doing. And in fact, the research I haven't seen any of the 4 groups that I know about doing what I'm thinking. But hey, but thanks to that, Dr. Faces Shaw, I was looking for something. Oh, I know. I want to get into, see if I can easily find. Okay, so hopefully it's in this paper. So don't know. So I'll find it in a second. So here's one of the papers. I don't know if this paper actually has that citation. I'm hoping it does. Bigger. So this paper, for example, ladies and gentlemen, I want to use this as a test case, and hopefully this one will give the answer to David's question. If not, I'll find another one. So this is an interesting paper. They decided to look at a meta-analysis of hedonic motivation in Utah 2. Maybe before I do this though, let me take a break and just make sure I show you all Utah 2 for those who may not never seen it before. So Utah 2 is something like that. It's hopefully one of them. It's a model where it's mapping the intention to use a technology with the actual use of the technology, and it says that there are a number of things that influence that intention to use and the actual use of a technology. So it says that it's moderated by age, gender, and experience, and then the primary variables that impact intention to use is performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, facilitating conditions, hedonic motivation, price value, and habit. And then, in fact, there are many different variations of Utah 2. So this is the idea. I think if it takes to the left here, it came about in about 2012, which was an upgrade from Utah 1, which never had a 1, which came from a whole series of models like TAM, planetary of, there are a whole long list of models that came actually out of public health and psychology. And they put them together and they came up with this Utah 2, which is now used in many disciplines, many different disciplines in different fields. Everything from business, health, psychology, and many other I'm not thinking of right now. So let's go back to this. So this is the idea of the model, just giving a frame. So the paper I just opened this paper is only looking at how come some people don't use hedonic motivation in their particular model. And what they did was a meta-analysis for those who have forgotten what it is or never heard. A meta-analysis is where the researcher or research team essentially requests the actual empirical data collected from research studies, puts them together, and then there's a new statistical analysis on all of those papers collectively to see whatever they want to find out. So typically something like multi-regression or structural equation modeling, some sophisticated statistical tests to test some hypotheses, one or more hypotheses or research questions. So this particular study, let's just look at the abstract quickly, said that they looked at a systematic review and meta-analysis of hedonic motivation, which is an effective construct in Utah 2 studies. If the findings from these 72 empirical studies shows that only 46 of those studies utilized hedonic motivation, whereas 42% didn't. And it doesn't say in the abstract. Anyway, unlike Utah 2, moderators associated with hedonic motivation were non-significant in determining the consumer intention to use the technology. And there was some association that was important between hedonic motivation and effort expectancy. Later in the paper, because I read part of the paper, it actually said that most people who did not use hedonic motivation in their studies didn't give a reason why they excluded it. So I read some of that. So this was interesting, and so the whole paper is all about that. So it's about, they looked at and did a whole lot of stuff, and all very fascinating where the studies were. So here are all the studies, nice sophisticated study. and I found it interesting. So I'm actually looking, let's go back to the beginning. This might not have, let's see, I'm seeing if it has what I'm looking for, what David said. Looking at the background to see if it has. I don't see it here. Looking for the background. I'm looking for a background in a paper that's going to tell us that UTAUT 2 has a better explanatory power than UTAUT. This is not the paper. But I actually wanted to show you this paper anyway, so I'm going to go on to another paper. So not this one. Let's look to see another paper that's about UTAUT 2. So let's look at this one. Even though it's not so new, this one might have it. So let's look at another paper, because usually good papers should have this as part of the background. So here's a paper. This paper is called Predicting the Acceptance and Use of ICT by Older Adults. And given that older adults need to use ICT right now in the middle of a pandemic to be relevant. So they say here that it's UTAUT 2 is actually valid among older adults, and performance expectancy had the greatest impact on whether older adults intended to use computers, basically. So now let's look at this. It was done, it's done in Portugal. Oh, this doesn't have the whole paper. Where's the paper? See, this doesn't have the paper. And this paper was actually cited by 161. That's still not getting me where I want. I just want a full paper that has a background. So let's move on to finding a paper with UTAUT 2. If we look at this.
But it had a see all results. Maybe one of them would have the complete paper.
Come again?
That where you just went to a while ago, it had a see all result. Perhaps one of them have the complete paper.
You mean back to that particular paper?
Wait. No, go back. No.
Here?
Go back to the search. The search that you had.
The search?
Yeah, it says showing the best, but it has see all results. So one of them may have the paper. I don't know.
No, these are other papers. Those are other papers.
That's
and
right.
my general rule to
was that paper. That was that one. Okay.
There are other ways to find it, and I could just stay right here on Google Scholar and put in UTAUT 2. I forget about my list, but I didn't want to do that. But versus TAM, and let's just do it recently. But that's going to be to predict consumers. Let's look at this. I was wanting to look at a paper quickly. I was going to find. Here, this one might have it. A systematic review and its usage trends. Yeah, to find a paper quickly, I was going to say that, but let's see if this one says it. But it was in the last presentation I gave. So this particular paper tells us that this is looking at literature review. This paper is about UTAUT 2 to predict consumer adoption of app technologies in Saudi Arabia. And they're going to get into UTAUT in Saudi Arabia and UTAUT again in Saudi Arabia and government. And they talk about some of the things, the prevailing stuff, theory of TAM, theory of reasoned action, theory of planned behavior, UTAUT, and then UTAUT 2. And all I want is a reference in here somewhere is going to tell us the explanatory power, which should be in any of these good papers. We could actually go to the original paper that they came out with UTAUT 2 and show that UTAUT 2 had better explanatory power than the other one. So I'm just looking. Okay, theoretical model selection. Okay. Model extension. These are the variables that were extended in the models. Propositions. Yeah, so this is going through all these variables that were extended. What I was actually looking for, which is not here in the paper. So this sort of is like This paper basically gives an explanation why Utah 2 seems to be better from a, from a conceptual point of view. But actually, if you look at the, oh, here we go. This is the sentence that I was looking for. So let me try and make it bigger. So this kind of thing is in so many papers. So Vitash et al. 2012 applies Utah 2 will achieve a considerable increase in the variance explained in behavior intention from 56% to 74%, and in technology use from 40% to 52%. So remember the model we looked at before, where there was a variable for intention to use and another one for actual use. The point is, when you use Utah 2 as opposed to TAM, and there are actually many studies that do that. There's actually been systematic reviews that have looked at this, that Utah 2, even though it's used less than TAM, it has statistically more explanatory power. But by the way, it's not perfect. And what people do in other papers is they tend to add another variable that they think is relevant because, oh, in this area, why not we put in this particular variable? Does that answer your question, Mr.
Yeah.
White?
Yes, excellent. That's exactly what I wanted to
I
say.
know, but there's many papers like that. So this is just one. And by the way, in the papers I had on that list, that would have been there. So to go back now to, so that this kind of thing is in many papers. So if you go to the original paper by Ventash et al. Is their colleagues, or the colleagues, the researchers that came up with Utah 2, this paper would actually show the improvement of explanatory power. So you just need to look up those original papers.
These figures from the Ventatesh is from his study.
Right, but
It's not generalized,
there's
right?
been many studies since that, Mrs. McNamara.
With various figures. I just want to get an idea. With various differences in the terms of the figures.
Yeah, there have been other papers that look at it and they're systematic reviews. It's all about just spending the time to look them up. Yes, there have been other studies that have looked at it. I mean, we could spend a few seconds to see, but I didn't want to spend time on that right now.
No, I'm not asking you to. I just want to have an idea. Thank you.
There are other papers. There are other papers that do refer to that. If my memory serves me right, I'm not going to, I'm not going to stick my head out. But as far as I recall, there are other papers like that. So for quantitative, what I was saying is there are so many papers this year using mobile food delivery apps during the COVID-19 pandemic. I extended the model of planned behavior. That's not Utah 2. This one is about mobile apps. I think so. This was in China. I'm trying to remember where this one was. In the food delivery service. And this is actually looking at customer lifestyle. This one might have been about, there's one about healthy food. I don't know if that was one of it. This is actually not about that. This is about internet banking, but it's in an African country. So the reason why I might consider using this in my paper if I was doing a paper is because I want to look at places where e-commerce is newly adopted. So that's why I would have considered this paper, just telling you why I have it on my list. This is directly about food delivery during pandemics and use of emotions, interesting, determination of continuous intentional food delivery on information quality. So there's lots of papers. Looking at, we just said this is not about food delivery specifically, but since this is important because if you're going to apply Utah to, we want to know that it's useful not just to young people, but also to older people. So, this would be useful because you want to know that it's actually valid across age groups. This paper is interesting because the paper shows that there was actually a difference in intention to use mobile banking between Lebanese and British consumers. I'm not going to go to the abstract right now, but there's differences. So for example, maybe in Jamaica, there might be differences between rural and urban, or if you want a Caribbean study, there might be differences between Jamaica and Trinidad, or within Trinidad between the Indians and the Blacks. I'm saying all this because generally when you write and read research, you need to read as widely as possible, not just in your narrow, oh, we're looking at e-commerce with food, that's all we're reading. Just giving you, this is not supposed to be a comprehensive thing. I'm just giving you a gist of how you, in my mind, how you start to read about research. So this is just my quick looking for some papers. This paper is about online food delivery during the pandemic. So clearly you want as many about food delivery during the pandemic, even if they're not directly related to your research question, because you want a background, what is known right now. Will consumers pay more for efficient delivery? That's an intriguing paper in Bangladesh. Another one I just showed you already about why people use or don't use hedonic motivation, good study, food commerce in the e-commerce era. Don't remember what this one was about, but I looked at all at least the abstracts. This one is looking at food delivery in the COVID crisis, clearly relevant. But this is particular hotels using, because they don't want to go out of business, basically having food delivery so that they can maintain business. This is the one about healthiness of food, intriguing paper. And so far, and maybe there are more, I found one paper about using UTaught as a qualitative approach. The point is, even UTaught 2 is a quantitative model. Yeah, in a meeting. Which is a quantitative model. Even that can be done in a qualitative way. And we can look at it right now if we have the time. Because basically what they did was they asked interview questions that center around all the concepts. So, one thing I didn't say, just for those who have never looked at it, each of the variables in UTaught 2, apart from gender, age, etc., the other ones are all constructs. Those constructs like performance, expectancy, has a number of items on a questionnaire that when you use it, you basically just put in the particular technology you are using. So what they did here with this qualitative paper was to basically ask some questions, interview questions that, or was it focus group? Either interview or focus groups that were around each of the constructs like effort expectancy, performance expectancy, social influence, hedonic motivation. I don't know if I use that one in that case, whatever. Those ones, habit, there's another one that's very important, tends to be, which is facilitating conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you can understand why if people don't have the technology, which is the facilitated conditions, maybe internet, maybe the actual devices, that's going to affect the ability of the intention and the use of that technology. And then mixed methods. So the point is about half of these papers I have here are actually not on my thing. Oh, I'm thinking of doing a research study looking at e-commerce and food. But what I'm looking at, because I'm thinking, let's see, why would anybody, since UTaught is really a quantitative, why would you use mixed methods? So I just typed into Google Scholar, my wonderful online database friend, and put in mixed method UTaught, and I was literally surprised to find that there were so many papers. I mean, since I was looking at e-commerce, I would have happy with more. But my argument, if I decided to do a mixed method UTaught approach, would be part of my argument might be this is a under-researched area. I mean, I need to think about it properly, you know. So I'm not saying I would definitely do that, but the point is people have done that, and there is at least one paper. Where is it again? So this paper here, which one? Trying to look. There was at least one paper. I'm trying to think. Oh, here. So this one, oh, that's UTaught 2. That's these are all not that. In fact, even this was interesting. This digital web conferencing. This is a mixed method study to see if people like web conferencing. That's relevant to us, for those in the education and technology space. This paper right here, intriguing mixed method study on the area. And then this one is also intriguing, interesting. This one also for people interested in technology and education, that they looked at for university students, giving them a tablet and seeing how they improve their academic writing skills. And this is the kind of people we can do, like right now in the pandemic. So that is why I'm saying that I don't believe that every study needs to have a framework. And I think we need to stop attacking the students and say, where's the framework? But colleagues, if it is that a framework would work with your paper, it might be useful. So there are lots of excellent studies in the world that have no theoretical model. And there are even good qualitative studies that don't lead to a theoretical model. And they're considered good by expert scholars, not me. I'm just new to this game. So we need to think about, but all I was saying is, even for people who are thinking through a quantitative only lens, or somebody like me who tends to be a pragmatist who says, yes, mixed methods is wonderful. We can use both qualitative and quantitative to discover what is happening in the world. Let me see. I'm trying to see which paper I had. I should have. What I should have done. I should have highlighted the papers. Let me just look at this one, since this might be using UTaught. Let me see what's in the chat while I'm here. Okay. Oh, so JCS, which they've renamed themselves, Jamaica Community Society guys have rebranded, but they're using e-commerce to solve a national challenge with ends. Oh, is this live or this in the replay, Mr. White?
In the replay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
you're
let me.
looking at ends, e-commerce in food and ends in particular.
Okay.
Yeah. So you might want to watch that.
Yeah, man. So what was I looking for now? I was going back to Google Scholar and just seeing this. So let's open this paper and see. Oh, this one didn't actually use. Yeah, the whole paper is there. So this particular paper did not use Utah 2. It looked at the theory of consumption values and looking for the values that drive food delivery application. And they looked focus group discussions were used to develop a questionnaire. So it's the qualitative is informing the quantitative, and then administrate to the cross-sectional survey, and then they analyze that using structural equation and modeling, and then they came up with some findings. What were the findings? They showed that visibility is the chief driver of purchase intentions, followed by affordances, price, and social value, which apparently is prestige. And food safety concern and health consciousness did not share any statistically significant association with purchase intentions towards food delivery applications in this study. I wonder where was it done? Let's look out of curiosity. This study was done. I'm just wondering if it says tell us where it was done. So here are the research questions. So these are the research questions, and I'm just curious where it was done. Let's go to the methods. I mean, not that matters. I'm just with these papers. I always want to know where they're done, because it does make a difference. Where's the? Oh, this is the. Wow, data collection in India. So this was done in India. Just curious. So, by the way, more and more these papers are not just done in the US and Europe. A lot of them are done in other parts of the world. So this paper was done in right. So basically, you would have got the gist of what I really wanted to. Yeah. Right. Right. So that's the gist of really, I mean, because we could take a lot more time and look at some of these papers that I have here, but that wasn't really the goal. It's just to give you a gist of there is value in qualitative, quantitative, and the like, and give you an idea that um, that 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 you need to be thinking clearly through which of these is valuable. So I'm now open to questions. The goal is to finish it within an hour and a half, which would basically mean by about 11 o'clock or so, because we started at just after 9:30.
One question: where are the slides for the sessions that we've been doing? Have we received the slides? I know the recording is available, but the slides, are they available?
I think what I'm going to do is, we haven't sent them out. I think ideally I just want to put them on a website, but
Okay.
we haven't sent them out. So I should ask Dr. Thorpe, Mr. White, Mrs. Faces, Dr. Faces Shaw, and we can either share them all through email and or on a website or both. But yeah, I'm certainly happy to share all my slides. Mr. White and Dr. Faces Shaw, I'm assuming that you're also willing to share the same. Any other comment or question? So the last thing, yeah, thank you, Dr. Fisher Shaw. So there's a questionnaire that's going to take, let me try finding it. So I'm going to find, there's a questionnaire we're asking you to fill out. So 2 of your colleagues, which includes myself, are doing a little research study, which we got approval from the Faculty Research Ethics Committee. And we're asking you to fill out the questionnaire so we can get some feedback. So I'm about to share it in the chat, and we're also going to share it through email. All right, so we just had mentioned the whole problem of recall bias. So we're actually asking you to take a evaluation of the first, this is the 5th session so far. So if you have not been at the other sessions, you can just say, but so this questionnaire essentially is asking for feedback of the overall project, each session, and your thinking about the research capacity of the school. So we're going to be, we want to see how everybody thinks and feels about where that is. And kindly, colleagues, we have no plans to do any data mining. We're just looking at where everybody in the school is in terms of research from a self-reported perspective. You have an option at the end to put in a self-reference for you to be involved in a prospective study, which you may opt not to do if you don't want to do. And the idea there is that this particular cross-sectional study, we want to continue to see going forward if there's going to be a difference in a few weeks or a few months or a few years. So we'd prefer that you make your own reference number at the end. It would be your initials and the last 4 digits of any phone number that you have or can remember, so that you can, when you fill out the next questionnaire, you will be able to see if there's an association with different things. But you don't have to do that. Kindly asking everybody to do the survey within the next day or 2, preferably. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I think this was a very, very good session, Miss Muir. And some persons who couldn't make it, like Mr. Clark, because this directly impacts his own research that he's doing as a master's student, and also some that he's supervising. So he's asking for the recording.
Mr. Clark, can you kindly, I don't have the recording. I don't have the recording. Since it's actually I hope you actually have recordings for all of them done so far. But I don't have the recording for the last 2 sessions. I don't have the recording for this one. It's your link. So
Yes.
I hope that you can send me. I hope that we can
yes, we'll
reconcile
send
all of
you.
this and we can send them all out.
All right.
Can you send me the one for right now?
Yeah, man, we'll do.
No, you
send
send me in the chat. And when the chat ends,
okay. That's
send
what
me
you
an
mean.
email. If you send me an email, I'll never lose it. I don't delete emails unless they're not vital to me. When you send me a program that's close, so you could send me both last week's, or if all of them, but certainly this week would be very useful. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can start doing the survey, we would be very happy, because we want to get an assessment of the perceptions of research in SCIT.
I started doing it, but then I kind of don't remember who did what sessions.
Oh,
so
well, I can help you out. I don't think I want to put that in this session. I could put it right now.
So I'm just wondering if I need to go back to the
first session
videos and then just to remind
the recording,
to remind me of what was what.
Yeah. And Susan, I just sent you a WhatsApp with today's recording.
Okay. On a side note, Mr. White, I prefer email. I'm very old school. But yeah, I can transfer the WhatsApp to email. But
Yeah, I'll send you as an email. It was easier to send a WhatsApp, right?
Um, I'm putting in the things in the chat. Fourth session was David White. Fifth session. I think that's it. I'm trying to remember. Dr. Fisher, when you presented, I think I presented after that. I think I did a workshop after that. Yeah, I did a workshop. When it was David White, it was basically the part I presented. Let's leave it at that. This, I think, right. I think this is correct, colleagues. So the first session, I was on presenting. Second session, Dr. Fisher presented on literature review. And then I did a little workshop about at the end. And then Dr. Thorpe presented, and then I presented a very short thing on Utah too, because we're kind of out of time. Maybe it was 10 minutes. Then the fourth session, Mr. White, that was last week. And today I presented on mixed methods, quantitative and qualitative research. As well as really, I did a second thing on Utah too on purpose, because I thought that other one last time was very short. So I wanted to kind of give you a framework and tie in the quantitative, etc. in there. Is that helpful, Mrs. McNamara?
Yes, could you remind me, please, of the topics for each session?
The topics are on the topics are actually in the
chat.
Survey?
In the chat.
In the survey. The topics
Okay.
are in the survey. So I mean, I guess let's see if I can hold on. I can't put it in this. This was I'm going to type it back over.
No, it's all right.
But it's actually in the survey, so.
All right.
So colleagues, any other question or concern? Mr. White.
Yes, I'm filling out the survey, Miss
Yeah,
Miller.
man, you can probably stop the recording on the live on YouTube, I think.
Okay, no problem.
If somebody has a question, we certainly can stop the recording.